Welcome to the Beer Flow podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Greg. Einstein Ed, he's back there somewhere. And today's episode topic is going to be styles of beer. Now, we here at the Beer Flow podcast, we're big sports fans. And that being said, a lot of people tend to, have beverages with sporting events, and sometimes myself included, unfortunately. If I'm watching a game, gotta have something, something cold to drink, nice liquid refreshment. And what better thing to accompany that than a nice beer? Now, we here at the Beer Flow podcast, we tend to use the term football beer. Now, football is just around the corner, and when we say football beer, it's not necessarily a derogatory term. It's basically a term we use when we're talking about what are called macro brews. Basically, those are beers and brews those are beers that are brewed on big, huge, massive scales. Your big major companies, Anheuser-Busch, Miller, all those types. We call those football beers because, well, basically, you really don't see anything from microbrews being advertised. And for one, advertising during sporting events, it's super expensive. And a lot of times the smaller guys, the microbrews, they don't have the money to advertise on such a grand scale. So, that's why you're going to see those big, Bud, Miller, all those ads on TV during the game. And I get it. It's, I grew up drinking that. My father, all of our fathers, mother, everyone grew up with that. Because for years, that's all that there really was. So, I get it. But now we have, microbrew and craft brew revolution going on right now. And, everyone's starting to get pretty assimilated to some of the smaller guys, and the only reason why I say smaller is because, compared to your big companies, they are smaller. So unfortunately, there's such a small percentage of sales that are generated from microbrews and craft brew. It's barely noticeable on the money scale compared to some of these big guys. So that being said, what's great is that with the microbrews and craft brew, there's so many different styles. There's so many different sub-styles, different subsects of beers. There really is something for everyone. When people have asked me, what kind of beer do you like? I like lots of beers. I personally look for new things to try because, to be honest, I've been able to try a lot, and it's great, and not everyone had a chance to. I really, really want to push people to, try different things. Try something you may not like. You never know. Something you never heard of, you got to try it. So what we're going to do today is we're going to basically break down the different styles of beer that you may have heard of, you may have seen, and hopefully you can take something from this and find something new. Just try it. I guarantee it's going to be cool. You'll dig it. So here we go. For this episode, what we're going to basically focus on is American beers. These are all, for the most part, American beers. Now, a lot of the origins of which they came are usually, European, Czech Republic, English, Irish, things like that. German, all those have, all those origins are from Europe. But what we're going to talk about today, it's going to be all American styles of versions of those, or kind of bastardized versions of it. I'm also going to give you some of the examples of those styles of beer that, you can get here in the West Coast, or at least definitely in this area. There are some that, you can get in other areas of the country, but unfortunately they may not be available over here to this side of the country. So I want to hurry up this process so you can go out there and get something new and try something new. Here we go. So basically, I'm going to start with your American ales. The big debate is ales versus lagers. right now, these are all different styles of American ales. First one, it's going to be like it's going to be American ambers and reds. Usually with ambers and reds, there's kind of a malt focus. Usually, usually toasted malts is going to be your big predominant flavor. It's going to be a nice dark rich color, maybe like a golden amber. Obviously, ambers and reds, those evidently and obviously those are called those because of the color. Some of the biggest ones you're probably going to recognize is going to be a Fat Tire from New Belgium, maybe Boont Amber from Anderson Valley, Green Flash Hophead Red Ale. That's a great red ale from Green Flash Brewing Company. Shark Attack Red Ale from Port Brewing. Those are great examples of ambers and reds. Pale ales. Now, a lot of people, the first one they're going to notice or remember or have heard of is going to be Sierra Nevada Pale Ale from Sierra Nevada. It's a classic. I mean, you can't fight it. Another good example is going to be Pale 31 from Firestone Walker. One that's available, it's a little bit more obscure, but it's definitely available. It's going to be great title, Doggy Style Classic Pale Ale from Flying Dog Brewery. Those are great. Good pretty much all year round. Those are refreshing. Nothing too heavy. Nothing too light. Real good flavor in those. So I would suggest, if you like Sierra Nevada, some of these other ones, definitely look them up. If you're in, you're in a retailer, you're in a store, if you see something that says Pale Ale, go ahead, give it a shot. Another fun style is going to be pilsners. Now, pilsners are going to be lighter in color, more, kind of a bright yellow. The word pilsner actually, it's Czech, from the Czech Republic. It actually comes from All right, let's spit this out and try it again. From the ancient city of Pilsner. So that's easy. Like I said, it's a big, nice straw-like yellow color. Two really good American pilsners that I like. Mama's Little Yellow Pills. That's made by Oscar Blues Brewery. Another great one. Shout out to San Jose. Gordon Biersch Czech Style Pilsner from Gordon Biersch Brewery. That's definitely one of the first pilsners I can remember trying that was made by a craft brew out in San Jose. Gordon Biersch. Great place. All right, so now for one of the styles that is usually near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. It's kind of one of the first styles that people have gravitated towards and kind of stuck to. It's your classic American IPA. That's originally it's an English style, but Americans have kind of gone crazy with it as far as, basically almost everyone makes an IPA. You go to a brewery, you go to a restaurant, bar and grill, you're going to see an IPA on tap. 9 times out of 10, you're going to see an IPA on tap. If you don't, well, then you might question it. I'm just kidding. No, it's a lot of people are called hopheads. The reason for that is, that's one of the biggest things you're going to taste in an IPA. An IPA is going to have big hoppy notes. It's going to have that real big, bitter, grassy, just it's a very, very distinct flavor and taste that you can tell right off the bat when you're having an IPA. If not, it's going to be something that's usually a little hopped up. But for the most part, if you're drinking something hoppy, it's going to be an IPA. So one of the, you've probably seen it. It's one of the go-to IPAs. It's Lagunitas IPA. It's the bottle that literally says IPA. It's probably one of the first IPAs people tend to remember because it says it in real big letters across the bottle, IPA, and it's great. It's a classic. Another great one is going to be Sculpin IPA from Ballast Point Brewing Company. Racer 5, that's just a great name. It's a little bit more available than it used to be. Just Racer 5 from Bear Republic Brewing Company. It is an awesome IPA. Another style that's now, here's where it kind of gets a little bit more technical as far as a not, we'll just say it's a not for everyone style of beer. It's you're gonna have your stouts and porters. Now stouts, it's originally an English style ale. It's an English and Irish origins. It's what makes it very American is we added like coffee and chocolate and what we've also done as Americans to the traditional stouts and porters, mainly with stouts. Well, stouts and porters. Americans started barrel aging them. So, after the brewing process, they would actually be aged in whiskey and bourbon barrels. So, with that, it's going to get a nice, deeper, darker, richer flavor. And, color-wise, that's probably going to be one of the biggest things you're going to notice as far as differentiating porters and stouts from everything else, from, IPAs, pilsners, all that. Those, that's going to be the biggest distinguishing characteristic is you're going to see a big, dark, black. I mean, the reason why it's going to be those colors because you're going to see that, it's going to take from the coffee, from the chocolate, and it's not only going to be in the flavor, it's going to be in the actual beer and in the color. A great stout that I've had, and if you get a chance, if you see it on tap, definitely get it on tap. But it's called Campfire Stout from High Water Brewing. Just phenomenal. One of the classic stouts is going to be it's actually called Chocolate Stout by Rogue Ales. That thing is literally like drinking a nice cup of hot chocolate, but in cold beer form. It's just fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Well, porters, like I said, they're pretty much going to be the same thing as a stout, but one big distinguishing characteristic is with the malts that they use, they tend to have more smoked malts. That's just basically it. It's like a roasted smoky malt. One of the biggest one beer that you can actually really taste the smokiness is the Alaskan Smoked Porter. That thing is just fantastic. That's by Alaskan Brewing Company, and I remember it was only available for a while. Now it's available all year round. If you got a good beer retailer, definitely pick it up. But just, be forewarned. It's going to be big, dark, and black, and it's going to actually have a smoky flavor to it. So, 9 times out of 10, no matter what it looks like, if you kind of go into it having an idea of what it's going to be, it's not so scary, and actually most people end up enjoying it. Another great one is one of my boys. Shout out, friend of the program, friend of the podcast. One of his favorite go-to beers is definitely Black Butte Porter from Deschutes Brewery. And now Deschutes, they do phenomenal beers. They're great. They do a lot of good specialties, a lot of good seasonal releases, limited releases. But Black Butte Porter, that's just the go-to. That's just textbook. You want a porter, try Black Butte Porter. It's not too crazy, it's not too strong, but it's great because it gives you that nice big introduction to porters. And actually, when I make my beef stew, I use 2 bottles of that in it, so it's great, pretty versatile. Now, like I said, with a lot of these beers, you have a bunch of different subsects. Like with IPAs, you have double IPAs, triple IPAs. Just there's a lot of different offshoots. Like for example, the double IPA, it's pretty much the same thing as an IPA. Hoppy. But with like a double IPA, it's doubled up. It's literally pretty much doubled up on its ingredients as far as doubled up on malts, doubled up on hops, and one of the other things that you're going to really recognize as far as the difference between a regular and a double IPA is that with the doubles, they definitely have a little bit more of a warmth going down. A little, I don't want to say boozy, but you can definitely taste a little bit more of that kick in the ass, just a little bit more warmth going down. But usually it's not going to be too heavy. Probably one of the most sought after beers that people have heard of, want to try, or just addict. Pliny the Elder by Russian River Brewing Company. That, it's a classic. It is definitely a classic. That's one of the beers that, all across the board, when you see different beers that, the best beers in the country, these type of surveys and things like that. Pliny by Russian Rivers, definitely up there. Pliny the Elder, definitely one of the better beers in the country. World renowned, country renowned, just phenomenal beer. Another great double IPA that a lot of people didn't even realize or know that it was a double IPA was Green Flash West Coast IPA by Green Flash Brewing Company. That's a really good one. Now with these ones, there is a higher alcohol, content to it, but it's not super crazy. Like, so another sect of different beers is going to be your barley wines. Now, back in the day, from what I was told, the reason why they're called barley wines is because the alcohol content was so high that the government said, and I don't know if this is state or national government, but the government said that it could no longer be considered a beer because the alcohol content was so high. So they said, in order for you to legally call it beer, you have to change the name to something else. So somebody came up with the brilliant idea to call it a barley wine. And as we know, hops, barley, water, that makes beer. So hence the name barley wine. I'd say probably one of the most popular barley wines is Sierra Bigfoot. That's a beer that used to only be available probably around January, December, right after their seasonal celebration ale came out for Christmas time. That's around the same time, right within, maybe overlapped or maybe there was a gap, but Sierra Bigfoot would come out, and that was a big deal. Now it's pretty much available all year round. That's just a great example of a barley wine. Also, Stone Brewing Company, they make one, Old Guardian. That thing's fantastic. Now, once again, people, when you go into trying something you've never tried, if you have an idea as to what you're getting into, you're probably going to enjoy it a little bit more. So just when you get into barley wines, just be careful. It is going to be, it's going to be a super alcohol flavored beer. It's, your average beers, they range in ABV, which if you heard the last podcast, ABV once again stands for alcohol by volume. So let's like right now, I have a Sam Adams Rebel IPA, and it's a great IPA. This one is 6.5% alcohol by volume. Now with your barley wines, those things are crazy. And this is kind of what made them illegal, was that barley wines are going to range anywhere between like 8.5 to some that go about 15% ABV. Now, that's huge because wine itself, most wines, actual, red wines, go from about 13% ABV to about 15 to 16, 17 ABV. So, anytime you see barley wine, please tread lightly. Usually those are going to be in your small snifters. Those are big. Just please be cautious. If you're drinking when Sierra Bigfoot first came out, it was one of the first times you'd seen beers in a 4-pack. And if you're drinking more than 4 of those, good luck to you, my friend. So, like I said, there's tons of different beers and styles. Those were just ales. Different varieties of ales. Now, we get into lagers. And there's always the big debate. I shouldn't say it's a big debate, but, there's ales and lagers. Usually with lagers, it's, with lagers, they're basically brewed and stored so they're brewed colder and for a longer period of time. the fermentation process is going to be different. And what I've always, the one thing about lagers is because it takes a while for them to actually brew, there's really no hiding. I tell people, you can't hide in a lager. Everything, it's going to be to the forefront. It's going to, with ales, it's a little bit faster. You can, have it in warmer temperatures and it's fine. But, with the lager, there's none of that. You're going to taste everything right away. And so there isn't a lot of room for error with a lager. So what we as Americans have done, we've made, especially the macro breweries, basically what a lot of the big breweries have done, especially after Prohibition, was in order to cut costs, instead of using super big, higher quality grains, they've actually taken out a lot of those, or I should say, they've used less, and they've supplemented those with things like corn and rice. And what those basically do is it's kind of like filler. So it's taking away some of the quality. With those, you're gonna get kind of like a sweeter taste, and it's definitely just different. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some good lagers. There's some examples of American ambers and red lagers. A lot of them are going to be made by the big macro breweries, like Michelob, Budweiser. They all make one. Some of the ones I think that were a little bit more, I guess, not as big. Like, okay, Trader Joe's, they make a dark lager. That's it's decent. It's especially for something that's going to be mass produced. It's a pretty decent one. But the one, and we don't really have it here on the West Coast, but it's huge on the East Coast. It's Yuengling Traditional Lager by Yuengling Brewery. Anywhere on the East Coast, you can get it, and it's actually good. It's really good. It's good. If you get on tap, it's great. It's really good stuff. Another good one. There's the American Pale Lagers, which with that with lagers and pale lagers, they've been called all malts, because basically malts are going to be kind of the forefront of traditionally of all lagers. So with a pale lager, it's going to be yellow and fizzy, but don't let that yellow fizzy stuff fool you. It's gonna be complex. It's gonna have a nice good flavor. There's definitely gonna be, you can taste there's something going on here. It's not just humdrum run of the mill lager. Session Lager by Full Sail Brewery. That's a great pale lager. Kona Longboard. If you've seen it, they sell the variety packs at Costco. Kona Longboard by Kona Brewing Company. That's a great pale lager. For the most part, your big brewing companies, it's gonna be the big yellow fizzy ones, and those are kind of the ones that we call football beer. After reading a bunch of stuff about lagers and things like that, the one thing that really drew my attention, sheerly for nostalgic sake, was there are a bunch of different write-ups about like malt liquor, or not a bunch. There was just one little section of malt liquor, and it just brought me back, and it was great because malt liquor is basically just your regular American. They call them adjunct lagers, American lagers. I guess what the rest of the world considers American adjunct lagers. Those are your big ones. Your Budweisers, your Millers, all of that. And I was looking up the definition, and it's just fun. I like definitions. The definition of the word adjunct, something added to another thing, but not essential to it. Okay, well, that gets back to the whole corn and rice thing. I get it. And with malt liquors, forget everything. They literally take out even more of like quality grains and intentionally add more of the corn, more of the rice, and dextrose, which is basically like it's sugar. So that's why malt liquors are the way they are. That's why they do the job that they do. By and large, that's why they're only sold in 40s, except for Mickey's Big Mouth. And I'm not going to lie to you, once again, surely for nostalgic purposes, I'd say every now and again, if I didn't have to go anywhere too far, or if a neighbor offered it to me and they said, hey, here's a Mickey's Big Mouth, and they pulled out from a 6-pack of Mickey's and handed me one, not gonna lie to you, I'd probably drink it and probably enjoy it. Everything else, like, oldie, that's Old English. If you don't know, if you're not down with the old school hippie hop, oldie is Old English. King Cobra, those are all just, look, everyone likes what they like. I don't like what I don't like. It's a big beer world. I suggest you go out and try something new. Now, I may not suggest a malt liquor at first, but I'm sure if you're kind of in my age demographic that, for one, appreciates the old school hip hop from the late 80s, early 90s, you're in that demographic. You know you've probably had one. So, if you're not in that demographic, don't worry. You didn't miss much when it came to malt liquor in 40s. Trust me. This episode was basically here to kind of break it down. And you can go online and you can find all kinds of just crazy information as far as different styles of beer. There's seasonal beers that, that's pretty obvious as far as just the wording of it. They're only available seasonally. And the fall season beers are coming out soon. We're going to do a whole episode about those. Some of the ones that we like. If you know of a place nearby you, remember Will Wednesdays, where I live, you shoot us an email, and we definitely want to hear about something. If you got a place that has a nice, awesome fall release, please hit us up. We'd love to hear from you. Now, if you go to the website, thebeerflow.com, if you look on show notes, we're going to have all kinds of links to different things, different places. And what we're also going to do is give a shout out to the Beer Flow podcast Jam of the Week. Now, with the release of the NWA movie Straight Outta Compton, and I guess a shout out to Malt Liquors and to Mickey's and Old E in particular. With those connections, the Beer Flow podcast Jam of the Week is by Eazy-E, released in 1988. The song is called Easy Does It, off the album with the same title. So go out there. Hopefully we've given you a little bit of insight to some of the different styles. Enjoy Eazy-E, enjoy NWA, and enjoy something new. Craig from the Beer Flow podcast, Einstein Ed from the Beer Flow podcast. We're out. Peace.
Well, I'm Eazy-E, I got bitches galore. You might have a lot of bitches, but I got much more. With my super duper group coming out the chute. Eazy-E, motherfuckers cold knocking the boots. Cause I'm a hip-hop thugster. I used to be a monster. If you heard